All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're going to reframe nearly a century of history to see exactly how creative problem-solving transformed simple, hand-drawn cartoons into massive, real-world infrastructure. You know, when we think of theme parks and animated films, we almost always just think of the finished product, right? The magic, the illusion, the story. But beneath all of that is a foundation of truly rigorous, groundbreaking engineering. So we're going to explore this whole evolution strictly from the viewpoint of the Imagineer, the folks who are literally tasked with engineering the impossible into reality.
There's this fantastic quote from Walt Disney that brilliantly captures the core Imagineering challenge. They needed to secure the ultimate, unconstrained canvas to build an immersive world entirely from scratch. See, back in California, Disneyland was totally landlocked. It was constrained to just 160 acres, and it got quickly surrounded by outside motels and businesses that basically ruined the immersive illusion. To truly build a self-contained universe, they realized they needed an unprecedented amount of space, a literal blank slate where they could control every single variable of what the guest experiences.
So here is how we'll break this all down today. First, the evolution of animation. Second, securing that massive Florida canvas. Third, engineering the actual theme park. And fourth, next-gen immersive storytelling.
Okay, Section 1. The evolution of animation. Looking at the screen as a canvas.
If you look at the timeline of early animation, you'll see that every single technological leap was designed to solve a very specific production problem. Take 1928, for example. They didn't just want moving pictures, they wanted the audience to actually feel the impact of the action. So they engineered synchronized sound for Steamboat Willie. Fast forward to 1937, and to keep an audience engaged for a full-length feature, they pioneered the incredibly vibrant hues of the 3-strip Technicolor process for Snow White. Later on, when soaring labor costs were literally threatening to bankrupt the whole industry, they adopted xerography for 101 Dalmatians. It was this amazing cost-saving photocopying magic that completely eliminated the grueling manual ink tracing process. And then, of course, in 1995, Toy Story came along and shattered that 2D plane entirely, kicking off the modern CGI era.
It's actually crazy when you look at the sharp contrast between the old and new methods. Think about the meticulous, manual tracing of rotoscoping used in early films to get fluid movement versus the sheer computational scale of modern CGI. For Snow White, to capture the realistic weight and gravity of human characters, animators actually filmed live actors and traced their movements frame by frame. It was incredibly tedious. Today, algorithmic CGI gives us limitless scale and dynamic lighting, but the foundational goal? It remains exactly the same. It's all about solving the mathematical and visual equations needed to make an artificial character feel completely, undeniably alive.
So another massive headache with early animation was that it just looked flat. To solve the problem of flat backgrounds, artists engineered these massive, multi-tiered machines called multiplane cameras. By photographing different layers of artwork from various distances all at the same time, and using strategic downward-facing camera angles, like what was used in Bambi, they created this psychological distance. They essentially engineered a perceived sense of three-dimensional depth on a purely two-dimensional screen.
This really brilliantly illustrates their visual strategy. By intentionally placing dark underbrush, tree limbs, or blurred elements right in the foreground, which is a technique known as occlusion, they created a voyeuristic, multi-layered depth cue long before digital 3D was even a thought. The animators were basically tricking the human eye, forcing the audience to peer through the environment to watch the story unfold. Honestly, it was environmental storytelling at its absolute finest.
Moving on to Section 2. Securing the Florida canvas. Finding the ultimate canvas.
Now, taking these world-building illusions from the drawing board to 25,000 acres of Central Florida swampland is without a doubt one of the most fascinating corporate maneuvers in American history. Real quick, before we uncover the secret agents and dummy corporations behind this explainer is brought to you courtesy of the Pixel Pioneer channel. Please subscribe, click the bell icon, like, comment, and share the explainer if you would like to motivate us to get more explainers out to you in the future. All right, let's look at the actual numbers here.
Get this. To avoid being landlocked like they were out in California, strategic planners secretly bought up undeveloped swampland for as little as $80 an acre. $80! But they knew that if the public ever found out who was actually buying all this land, the prices would absolutely spike. And, well, they were right. Once a local reporter finally leaked their true identity, the price of the surrounding land skyrocketed to an unbelievable $80,000 an acre.
So how in the world did they keep it a secret for so long? They used a whole network of secretive dummy corporations. The real estate agents buying the land didn't even know the true identity of their client. They just bought up parcels using these hilariously named shell companies. For example, there was MT Lot Real Estate Investments, literally meaning empty lot, or the A4 Corporation, which was a sneaky nod to the nearby Interstate 4. This massive clandestine operation was absolutely crucial. It ensured they could secure the massive footprint required for decades of long-term infrastructure planning without being priced out of the market.
But here's the thing, just buying the land wasn't enough. They needed the ultimate freedom to innovate without getting bogged down by standard municipal red tape. Through the 1967 Reedy Creek Improvement Act, they acquired totally unique regulatory control. They essentially established a private government. This district gave them immunity from certain county land use laws, allowed them to issue tax-free bonds, and gave them the sheer authority to build their own roads, power plants, and advanced transportation systems like that iconic monorail network. It was a complete masterclass in establishing the legal and physical infrastructure required to sustain relentless innovation.
Which brings us to Section 3, Engineering the Theme Park. Let's look at engineering the magic.
Now we arrive at the ultimate Imagineering puzzle. It was both geographical and geological. How do you build massive, incredibly heavy structures? We're talking castles, roller coasters, giant hotels, on what is essentially wet, unstable swampland with a ridiculously high water table. You can't just pour a concrete foundation. The whole thing would just sink.
The solution they engineered for this was absolutely brilliant. Step 1. They excavated millions of tons of earth to create a giant man-made body of water, the Seven Seas Lagoon. Step 2. They took all of that excavated dirt and used it to elevate the surrounding land. On this newly elevated ground level, they built a massive hidden network of utility corridors, which you might know as the utilidors. These huge tunnels house the power lines, waste management, and cast member break rooms. And finally, Step 3, they built the actual theme park directly on top of these utilidors. So next time you are walking down Main Street, remember, you are actually walking on this second floor.
This exact same culture of just figuring out a way to engineer past physical constraints is what birthed the world's first tubular steel roller coaster back in 1959, the Matterhorn bobsleds. Before this, coasters were mostly made of wood, and that severely restricted how the track could bend and twist. By inventing tubular steel construction, Imagineers completely disrupted the game. They set a brand new global industry standard, allowing for the incredibly smooth, high-speed inversions and crazy drops that we see in modern thrill rides all over the world today.
All right, let's head into our final act. Section 4, Next-Gen Immersive Storytelling, the next frontier.
The evolution of physical hardware inside the parks is staggeringly rapid. Back in 1963, we had audio animatronics in the Enchanted Tiki Room. Now, these were amazing at the time, but they were essentially simple, binary, pneumatic-driven birds. Their movements were just on or off. Fast forward to 2009, and we get animatronics. Figures like Otto were suddenly equipped with cameras and sensors that could actually read the room and dynamically react to a guest's mood. And by 2018, we reached the era of Stuntronics, these autonomous, heavily censored robots that can launch themselves completely free flight through the air, self-correct their trajectory mid-flight, and land perfectly, just like a real-life superhero swinging over a campus.
Today, modern digital mapping and highly complex robotics, like the A1000 series, give physical figures this fluid, lifelike movement that honestly used to only be possible by tracing film back in the rotoscoping era. In the past, an animatronic hand was just one clunky mechanism. Now, the A1000 series features individual actuators for each and every single finger. Plus, they use a cutting-edge technology called compliance. It basically acts like a set of digital shock absorbers, allowing these massive robots to move rapidly and stop smoothly without violently shaking. It brings an unprecedented level of organic realism right into the physical space.
But you know, the horizon goes even further than robotics. By blending this advanced physical hardware with virtual reality headsets and augmented reality overlays, Imagineers are actively erasing the border between the ride itself and the guest. It's no longer just about sitting passively in a vehicle and watching a diorama roll by. The environments themselves are becoming interactive. They're processing your presence and reacting in real time, effectively turning the entire park into one cohesive, interactive story where you are the main character.
So think about this whole journey. Considering they started by simply trying to figure out how to add visual depth to a flat piece of paper, and somehow ended up acquiring the footprint of a small city, entirely rewriting local governance, and building an autonomous network of flying robots, it really makes you wonder, what impossible boundary do you think they're going to break next? Keep that exact question in mind the next time you experience an illusion that feels just a little too real. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.